The hereditary chiefs had a meeting yesterday and have confirmed and restated that they will not be meeting with any of the levels of government until the RCMP are off of the territory.
Tonight, the RCMP move out while Wetsuwet'en supporters move back into the camps.
This report is not really intended to be a critique of the process. It's intended to be a very sincere reflection.
A new report reviews the Indian residential school settlement agreement.
I'm not really that much into my own culture, so I really like much to be.
And kids rise up to learn their culture through a Winnipeg school program. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Provincial and federal ministers are trying to meet with Wetsuwet'en hereditary chiefs in northern British Columbia, hoping to bring a peaceful end to the blockades and solidarity protests taking place across the country. In an olive branch this morning, Canada's Public Safety Minister Bill Blair said RCMP are moving out of Wetsuwet'en territory. APTN's Lee Wilson has more on what it all means.
There have been solidarity protests taking place across the country, with some shutting down streets and major railways, leading to fierce national debates.
Are holding our country's economy hostage.
Federal Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Carolyn Bennett, is trying to find a peaceful solutions to the blockades taking place across the country. But Wetsuwet'en hereditary chief of the Gidimt'en clan, Chief Wallace, said they will not meet until the RCMP are completely off the territory. Gidimt'en spokesperson Molly Wickham gave an update on the chief's stance.
The hereditary chiefs had a meeting yesterday and have confirmed and restated that they will not be meeting with any of the levels of government until the RCMP are off of the territory.
That police move out of the territory seems to be happening. The Maurice Service Forest Road is back open with no more RCMP checkpoint or exclusion zone. Wetsuwet'en supporters have reoccupied the camps, and the Coastal GasLink project workers are back clearing and grading. This morning, in Ottawa, Public Safety Minister Bill Blair announced the RCMP will be withdrawing forces stationed in Wetsuwet'en territory.
The RCMP have enforced that injunction and cleared the barricades, and the road is now open. And they said that they'll deploy their officers from the nearby town and have asked for a commitment from, the hereditary chiefs that the road will remain free of obstruction. And it's moving towards a less confrontational and a more peaceable arrangement, entirely appropriate to the circumstances, and I'm very hopeful that will satisfy the concerns that were raised.
In search for a peaceful solution, Federal Minister Bennett and Provincial Minister Scott Fraser released a letter stating they could meet with Wetsuwet'en hereditary chiefs as early as today. There has been no response yet from the chiefs. Meanwhile, many Northern First Nations who don't oppose the pipeline feel they have not been heard. Speaking at a rally in Houston, with nearly 200 people in attendance, some Wetsuwet'en expressed their support for the Coastal GasLink pipeline. But for the hereditary chiefs, they say they will continue to oppose the pipeline and that the eviction notice still stands.
The rest of the hereditary chiefs have unanimously gone up in our feast hall according to Wet'suwet'en law, and transparently, with accountability, in our feast hall with the whole community in attendance, have over and over again stated that they're opposed to this pipeline specifically and all pipelines through our territory.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Northern British Columbia.
With some railway shutdowns now entering their third week, politicians in Ottawa are turning up the heat on the Trudeau government, but Liberals are countering that pressure, saying new developments could soon lead to a resolution with the Wetsuwet'en hereditary chiefs.
The Liberals continue to come under fire for their response to what many are calling a national crisis. Conservative MP Mark Strahl said Canada is showing weakness.
I think that the RCMP should enforce the court injunction. And they can decide how they do that, but they should get a signal from the government that we expect court injunctions to be enforced and upheld.
Carolyn Bennett said the RCMP's offer to move away from the Gidimt'en and Unistoten camps is promising, and that enforcing injunctions now would be unwise.
I believe that we have learned from the crises at Oka and Ipperwash and Caledonia and Gustafson Lake, and I believe that the police also understand their role in that. Last year, We said that we never wanted to see again the images of police having to use force in an Indigenous community in order to keep the peace.
The NDP have also urged patience and diplomacy, but say the Liberals still need to do more.
They want to meet with the Prime Minister specifically. So my question is very simple. Will the Prime Minister meet the chiefs of the hereditary region in Wetsuwet'en?
Again, Mr. Speaker, I think we can all be heartened by the development that has happened in BC with RCMP has extended to hereditary chiefs as an opportunity to sit down and continue that dialogue. This is a positive development, Mr. Speaker. The move of the Wetsuwet'en hereditary chiefs to Tyendinaga is a positive development. I think everyone in this House is dedicated to a peaceful resolution of this. There are clear steps to de-escalation. Myself and the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations stand ready to engage with leadership in Tyendinaga as soon and as when and as early as tonight to go and meet them and discuss this peaceful resolution. Thank you.
Despite the RCMP's response to one of the Wet'suwet'en demands, one hereditary chief, Smogulgum, responded on Twitter today, saying that the early January eviction notice to Coastal GasLink, the company that's building the pipeline through their territory, still stands. Now, APTN reached out to Coastal GasLink, but they gave no indication that they'd be leaving the territory anytime soon. In the meantime, hereditary chiefs will reportedly meet with their Mohawk allies in Tyendinaga tomorrow. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A press conference in Vancouver today highlighted some similarities of the RCMP response to anti-shale gas land defenders back in 2013 and the situation that's happening now in Wet'suwet'en territory. APTN's Tina House has those details.
It's a packed press conference at the Union of BC Indian Chiefs as details were read about the response from the Silver Review Complaints Commission for the RCMP. It's regarding the exclusion zone in Wet'suwet'en territory.
So last month on January 29th, and then in an urgent follow-up letter that was also issued on February 9th, Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs, the BCCLA, and the Union of BC Indian Chiefs filed a complaint to the chairperson of the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP. The CRCC is an independent civilian oversight body over the RCMP. In our letters, we urged the CRCC chairperson to launch a chairperson-initiated complaint and public interest investigation regarding the improper and unlawful actions of the RCMP in implementing and enforcing a checkpoint and exclusion zone in Wet'suwet'en territory.
In a 9-page response letter from the CRCC chairperson, Ms. Shalane Lahaye, she stated that the Commission has in the past conducted an extensive and thorough investigation into many of the same issues relating to the RCMP's policing of anti-shale gas protesters in New Brunswick in 2013. The Commission sent its report to the RCMP in March 2019 and is awaiting the RCMP Commissioner's response.
Why is it that the RCMP sat on it for a year, and why haven't we seen it? So the issues that we're seeing at the national level, which are so critical around policing of Indigenous people, respecting the rights of Indigenous people, it's like, is there some sort of hidden backroom process? Like, when are we going to bring this out in the public and address it? This is a known problem.
Delay Alexis Nikel says she's disheartened about what's going on in her homelands.
We can see militarized forces out on our territories keeping us from our own land, from land that our ancestors took care of.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
The trials and tribulations of a former Thunder Bay mayor have come to an end. Keith Hobbs, his wife Marissa, and an acquaintance Mary Voss have been acquitted of extortion. The three were accused of forcing another person into an alleged real estate deal. There was a publication ban on who that was. Keith Hobbs was a high-ranking police officer in Thunder Bay before he was elected mayor in 2010. The extortion charges were laid in 2017. Hobbs did not seek re-election in 2018. A judge in the case said that there was not enough evidence to convict the former mayor or the two co-accused of the charges. We've got new details about families in northern Quebec pushing for justice for babies who went missing from hospitals there. That's coming up after the break. First, here's tomorrow's weather for the east and central parts of the country and a peek at what's coming up on Nation to Nation after the news.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamarand, and here's what we're working on for Nation to Nation. It's our first political panel of the year with members of Parliament. we'll be continuing our discussion of the protests happening across Canada with members of the Conservatives, NDP, and Liberal government. Basically, it comes down to using patience versus getting tough and removing the barricades now. We'll also hear from the front lines of Tyendinaga Mohawk territory as Annette Francis gives us the latest there. And I'll tell you why Nunavut's NDP MP said no when a Mi'kmaq Liberal MP suggested having a blanket exercise for the House's Committee on Indigenous Peoples. It's all coming up after the national news.
Fredericton's -7 and sunshine, -8 and snow in St. John's. La Grande River -7 and snow, Kuujjuaq -16 and snow. Set Hills -12 with a mix of sun and clouds, Chibougamau snow -7. North Bay -2 and snow, Sault Ste. Marie sunshine and 1 degree. Sioux Lookout 0 and cloud, 3 and sunshine for Thunder Bay. Norway House and God's Lake and Thompson -1 and sunny, -2 and sunshine for Puckatawagan. -2 and sunshine for Winnipeg, -1 and sunny in Brandon. Estevan and Yorkton +1 and sunshine, 0 in Saskatoon and sunny skies. Buffalo Narrows sunshine and 3 degrees, -4 and snow in Stony Rapids.
Welcome back. Last month, APTN explored the tragic saga of missing Atikamekw children in northern Quebec, many of whom were taken from hospitals and never returned. And in many cases, medical records are inaccessible to the families. A proposed bill meant to improve access to information doesn't quite go far enough, some say. That's according to families and leaders involved. Lindsay Richardson explains.
On demande pas grand-chose, là.
We're not asking for much, Ghislain Picard explained to members of the National Assembly as the AFNQL presented its request to revise an access to information bill that could shape the future for dozens of Atikamekw families living in Quebec.
The government is missing the point. You know, to be an accessory to a bill like 31, which has nothing to do with, you know, the drama and the emotions that they have gone through and the tragedies, you know, is totally inadequate.
Following outcry from families of missing or apprehended Atikamekw children whose stories were chronicled in the Quebec-specific MMIWG inquiry report, Bill 31, introduced by Quebec's health minister, was quietly amended to address concerns about accessing certain information and services. But not all, advocates say.
Nous les avons lus, étudiés, et ça ne nous convient pas.
Last week, members of the Ottawa and Dubé families, who've long searched for news of missing infant siblings, addressed media directly in Quebec City. Family back in Manawan used other means to show support.
Non au projet de loi 31.
The bone of contention between parties is the lack of consultation. Picard was not aware of the amendments until he was contacted directly by opposition members. He then contacted the families, who worry the bill will be passed as is.
Again, as we've seen too many times in the past, we sort of caught in a situation where you know, we're being informed at the 11th hour.
Earlier this month, opposition leader Manon Massé and Health and Social Services critic Saul Zanetti co-signed an open letter requesting an immediate repeal of Bill 31 in favor of a distinct bill permitting access to personal information regarding missing or deceased Indigenous children by their families after having consulted and considered the priorities of First Nations and Inuit peoples.
La façon de faire les choses, le moyen est aussi important que le résultat du projet de loi.
But the cause was dealt an unexpected blow shortly after this public address. Pierre-Paul Niquet, the portfolio head for Manawan's missing children, himself searching for information on 2 older brothers, was outed in a Radio-Canada report as a registered sex offender. The Manawan Band Council has not addressed the report, and the Dubé family deferred APTN's request for comment.
First and foremost condition is the dignity for these families and the situations that they've lived.
Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
What I would add as well is
the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation released a new report today reviewing the largest class action settlement in Canadian history. The Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement established a multi-billion dollar fund to compensate former residential school survivors, but the process was marred with flaws and in some cases re-victimized survivors. As Brittany Hobson shows us, the Centre hopes that their new report can be a roadmap for future settlement agreements.
In this divisive situation,
Lessons Learned, Survivors' Perspectives is the name of a new report recently released by the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. It's based on residential school survivors' experiences with the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement.
This report is not really intended to be a critique of the process. It's intended to be a very sincere reflection on the lessons learned. And that's the name of the report. What did we learn so that we don't repeat these mistakes in the future?
Rai Moran is the director of the centre. He says several themes emerged as survivors shared their experiences over the course of a 5-month review.
The residential school settlement agreement was massive. It was very complex. It did result in a lot of change, which is positive in terms of rising public awareness, the ability for people to gather. But we also saw that many of the persistent problems that have plagued this nation, such as disrespect of Indigenous ways of knowing and being, putting victims of trauma through processes that are not well suited to their needs, presented a fairly significant barrier, obstacle for people.
The settlement process came into effect in 2007. It wasn't without controversy.
As new people came in or as people were replaced, they didn't have that early grounding, so came in adopting very standard, like maybe corporate litigation or civil litigation or other kind of standard practices that weren't Indigenous, weren't informed by Indigenous principles or practices.
Eugene Arcand is the chair of the centre's governing circle and a survivor. He says those involved in the process were not impartial.
Never again in our history can we allow the perpetrators to administer an agreement. It is just simply wrong.
Terry Brown is a fellow survivor. She hopes the report will demonstrate the need for an Indigenous-led approach for other settlements, such as the current day school agreement.
People will know how to create a safe space because most of us know what it's like to be unsafe. It's alienating when you walk into a room and the person is very governmental and they're government process-oriented. And you don't see a brown face looking back at you.
Brown was also a founding member of the Centre's Survivors Circle. She says this is a good model other processes could follow. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
White supremacy takes many forms: organized groups of skinheads, online forums, or as some say, even just the history of Canada itself. Here's a preview of reporter John Murray's latest episode for APTN Investigates called Inside Hate.
Canada. Diversity, freedom, and celebration. Canada welcomes all and treats everyone the same. Right?
Columbus came into this country saying he was coming peaceful. They say they're coming into the country peaceful when they're not. Got a message? It just goes to show we come trying to be peaceful, and then they bring the violence.
Does Canada's own behavior give space to hate and bigotry?
Oh, you don't even know me, man. You don't know what I've done for the world.
You're a white supremacist piece of shit.
Okay, and then when you check me up online, you're going to find out some stuff.
What's your name?
Guys,
Totally.
you're both stopping here. You're obstructing us now.
Hate comes in many forms. Microaggressions, like being followed by security. And worse.
Anyone who was visibly not white ended up getting it. The fact is that I was pretty violent, or very violent, throughout my time on the street and my involvement in the white supremacist movement.
You can watch part 1 of Inside Hate after APTN National News tomorrow night. More great stuff from APTN Investigates, of course, but it's time for us to take another break. When we come back, kids learning about culture and human rights. And here's the rest of tomorrow's weather for the west and the north.
To northern Alberta, we've got 1 in sunshine for Fort Chip, 5 and sunny in Fort McMurray. 6 in sunshine for Edmonton, 8 for Calgary and Lethbridge and sunny skies. 9 in rain in Tofino, Campbell River, 7 in a mix of sun and cloud. Sandspit and Prince Rupert, cloudy and rainy and 6 degrees, 2 in Fort Nelson. Beaver Creek, -5 in sunshine, -15 in snow for Old Crow. Norman Wells, -9 in snow, Fort Laird and Trout Lake, 5 degrees in sunshine. Inuvik, -13 in snow, Colville Lake snowing at -12. Chesterfield, -25 in clear skies, Whale Cove, -24 in snow. Pangertung, -32 in clear, Igloolik, -31 in clear, Joe Haven, -32 in clear.
Welcome back. Hundreds of Indigenous kids from Winnipeg's Seven Oaks School Division are participating in a 2-day program at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. APTN's Daryl Stranger takes us inside the museum to show us what those kids are learning.
I'm not really that much into my own culture, so I really like much to be.
Celebrating, learning culture, and discovering how students can take action for human rights. That's the goal of having kids participate in this 2-day program. Students were given a crash course in jigging and square dancing, a traditional dance of many peoples. Kevin Chief was among the dancers who shared his own journey of growing up as an Indigenous kid. He hopes today's youth can realize how much of an impact sharing and telling stories can have.
So in the spirit of being at a National Museum of Human Rights, the whole message is about that we learn the most through our stories. And the most powerful thing that a young Indigenous person can do is to know their story, to know where they're from, and to articulate that story to people. It's not only engaging, it's inspiring. And I thought being at a Museum of Human Rights, there's no better place to give a message to young people for them to know their own stories.
This is the second Rise Up gathering the Seven Oaks School Division has done after a successful first year. Many of the presenters and teachers feel this is an important event outside of the classroom to have the kids learn about Indigenous culture.
I hope that they take away motivation to learn more about their culture and to learn a little bit more about language and some of those traditions that, you know, were lost along the way historically and then that are being introduced again. And I hope that they feel that that's part of who they are and it's something that they need to learn about in order to kind of grow as a person.
On day 2, the students will be back for a keynote speech by NDP MLA Bernadette Smith and take part in a powwow demonstration. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We are all out of time. If you've missed anything, you can, of course, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Lots of up-to-date information on the Wetsuwet'en situation is on our website. I'm Melissa Ridgen. I'll see you back here tomorrow night. Stay tuned now for Nation to Nation.